Good morning, Trump family. Welcome to Open Source News. Have a good day and God bless you. Alright, the following is a collection of news from Patriots. Let's get into the news this Friday morning. And it looks like Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff were able to pass this amendment that would make it impossible for the legislative body to do basic checks on military operations, even if it was done domestically. This is something they were working to try to make sure that they could cover up before Republicans could retake office in the coming election. Because if Republicans take office, they could obviously hold committees on the failures of Afghanistan and everything that went into that, the military's role on January 6th, in the military's role, and other things that are happening around the world that will policies, the transgender policies and things like that they're currently taking place, even medical policies that are taking place where the military is looking at discharging over 200,000 troops, because of these troops are unwilling to take the vaccine. And of course, the hardest hit troop section of these areas are, of course, National Guardsmen, but not only them, the special forces of the military would be subject to this. So this is something that's currently going on right now. Pelosi was able to get this thing passed in the House today. But she actually had to go down there and vote herself because they did not have enough votes to pass this. So she had to go down and vote. So we're going to take a look at this story in just a moment. And here's that story. Up here right now. You can go check out me talking about this originally last week, which was 7 days ago. So let's go and dive in this coming to it from Julie Kelly, who originally broke this story. And of course, the media doesn't want you to really understand what's going on. She says here breaking the House just passed this amendment by 2 votes. Pelosi voted and 2 Democrats voted no. And this is it. This is the thing here. So it's breaking Shift files an amendment to the NDAA. That would conceal any info collected by the U.S. military to use in congressional investigations or court proceedings, massive attempt to cover up for enormous proportions and preemptive power grab to prevent the GOP oversight next year, which we talked about, and they are moving forward. So whether or not that's going to pass the House, the Senate or not, is another thing, but this is how corrupt these individuals are in this. It says think about what this means. Defense Secretary Austin can decline any requests for materials related to deadly Afghana withdrawal work policies, vaccine mandates, injuries. January 6th, among other issues, for example, GOP committees would be prevented from examining the military's role in the events of January 6th, including the use of assets before and on that day, as well as the use of intelligence services such as the NCIS, which we know were part of the investigatory process. What are they trying to hide? And they are trying to do whatever they can to cover themselves right now. This is a massive cover-up taking place in Congress right now where they don't want oversight. They don't want the American people to see what they've been doing, who they've colluded with, what agencies were colluding together in order to try to take down the president, all of this stuff, they do not want to come to light. So what they're going to do, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi and who knows how many swamp creatures in the Senate are willing to go ahead and give this thing passage, so therefore, there can be no committees and they can't inquire about what has taken place up till now. Democrats are insulating themselves so they can get off scot-free without any consequence for the role they took part in during this entire thing that we've seen unfold last couple of years. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now the deep state, the corrupt politicians are private was central bank. Their entire system that was put into place many years ago. It started out in 1913. Accelerated the 1940s, then continued, they went off gold and continue full fiat in 1971. That entire system is being dismantled right in front of our eyes. And remember, it's not just the Federal Reserve buildings that have to be removed, that has nothing to do with it. Think about what the private was the central bank system put into place. They put the criminal syndicate into place. It's part of their system. This is not to entities, this is all part of the same exact system. So if you see leaders that are resigning today, or presidents that are fleeing, it means their system is being dismantled, because if you remove the criminal syndicate, you then remove the private sector bank because they lose control over those countries. Because eventually what's going to happen, since the people chase them out, the people are not going to stand for another one that was just like the one they chased out. And we can see this happening right now. Think about what happened in Sri Lanka. They chased the president out of the country. Think about what's happening in France. Macron lost his coalition. Think about what's happening now in Italy. Draghi lost his coalition and there's protests outside of his house. And he decided that he was going to resign. Of course, the president doesn't want to accept his resignation. Because they realize what's happening. They realize if all these people resign and everything falls apart, they're in trouble. Boris Johnson, he already resigned. I do believe the next person to resign might be Macron. We'll have to see how this plays out. But I do believe what's happening right now is the entire system is breaking down. And it's being dismantled one by one. And really think about it. If you wanted to destroy the central bank system, and you wanted to get rid of the deep state players, the whole entire system, what do you need to do? Can you do it alone? Can you go up against a system that's so entrenched, so deep and wide? Can you fight that type of system? No, it'd be completely impossible. But if you have the people around the world experiencing an economic collapse, which is a controlled demolition caused by the criminal syndicate caused by the private West Central Bank, you can get the people all riled up, you can get the people to see the truth. And you can have the people then make a move and say, we are not happy with what's going on. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. Think about what's happening with the Green New Deal. If there was a war, or there was a global economic shutdown, and they told us that we had to go to green energy, people wouldn't have seen anything. They would have just said, okay, we're going to get rid of fossil fuels. We're going to go right into Green New Deal, and it's going to be great, and people wouldn't have noticed anything. Why? Because there'd be destruction. There'd be chaos. Probably no power, even with a pandemic. There'd be no supply chains running. We wouldn't have food. So people would just see the green energy system come online and they would think it was great. But what happens when we're coming from a system that is still using fossil fuels? We're still coming from a system where the supply chains are still intact. We're coming from a system where we don't see the destruction, the chaos. Can people see everything very, very clearly? They can. And think about what the deep state, the prime, what central banks have to do to create that situation, to bring us into the Green New Deal, into the Great Recession. They actually have to manually shut everything down right in front of the people. And that's what they've been doing. They've been shutting down the fuel systems, they've been shutting down it all. And people can see what happens when this occurs. And when they bring their Green New Deal part of it at least online because they haven't had time to prepare. When they bring some of this online and say drive an electric car, use solar energy, and the sun doesn't come out and there's no wind or they can't power the windmills. What happens? People notice that these things aren't working. Actually, the people out in Germany, they're realizing this. Forecast 432 on Telegram put this out. And this is coming from Javier Blas, and it says the following: the German energy crisis have reached the point where Deutsche Bank starts to model, let's call it that, the potential for gas to wood substitution for heating German households this winter. Now think about that, gas to wood. So Germans, they're fighting for wood. And the ones that were this winter, they're going to freeze, because they didn't understand what was happening. And they didn't get the wood that they needed. Now that is very interesting. So people that are seeing this very clearly, what do you think they said? Hey, no. Natural gas is part of green energy. Nuclear is part of green energy, because everything that we're witnessing right now has been accelerated. They're not prepared for this. And it's completely falling apart around them. Trump, he put this out on True Social. He said he actually read through someone, it's Bella. And this is what it says. Mexican President Obrador just criticized the Dems publicly during his meeting with Biden today and said, many Americans are coming across the border from the USA to Mexico for gasoline. Obrador never said that when Trump was in office, Trump had a great relationship with Obrador. Absolutely. And you could see what's happening out in Texas, just like in Germany, this entire Green New Deal thing, it's falling apart. Right now, Tesla has asked owners in Texas not to charge their cars during a heatwave to help avoid blackouts, because it would overload the state's failing power grid. Now think about it. We talked about this the other day. We know that the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, ERCOT, they gave a warning saying, listen, there's no wind, we don't have that much electric. Now we have the electric car manufacturer saying, listen, don't charge your car at certain times. Now remember, when the fuel prices were going up, we had all these corrupt politicians say, I just drove my electric car right past the gas station. Because now people who aren't charging their cars because of a power grid failure, how are they going to get anywhere? And people are starting to see this very clearly. And the entire Green New Deal is completely imploding on itself right now. Everything that the deep state, the private central bank, has tried to do, it is not working. It's being exposed to we the people, and the people around the world can see this very clearly. And more countries, they are starting to protest. They're starting to push back, and it's becoming so bad that the leaders have to resign because of this. Remember, the economy unites the people. The people have this in common, that people will work together to get the corrupt out. If they can't get food, if they can't heat their homes, if they can't pay their bills, they will join together and go after those who are responsible. This is what's going to happen in this country. As things get worse and worse, when we reach that crisis point, the people of this country will come together. And I don't mean 100%. It's never going to be 100%. But the majority of the people, what 80%, 90% of the people, they're going to come together, and they're going to push the corrupt people up because they know who's accountable. What do you think is happening in these countries? That people know who is a cow who's accountable for everything that's being done? And they're watching them. They're watching their actions, not what they say. And they're not doing anything to fix the problem. And the people now are saying no more, just like the Dutch farmers. They're saying, we know what you're trying to do. You're trying to buy up our land. You're trying to make us so we can't grow crops. You're trying to make it so we eat bugs for food. They see all of this. They understand this. People aren't stupid, especially when it comes to the economy. When you push people back in the corner, and they can't make a living, they can't pay their bills, they can't heat their house. They can't do anything because of what the corrupt have done. Now, think about the inflation here in this country. People can see this very clearly. Ron DeSantis put this out on Twitter. He said the following brutal inflation report shows a devastating increase of 9.1% year over year. Biden flirtation is wreaking havoc on workers, families, and small businesses, a consequence of anti-American energy policy, exorbitant borrowing and printing of money, and counterproductive federal regulations. That pretty much sums up the entire thing. Trump, he put this out onto social. He said, inflation, inflation, inflation. And it was also avoidable. It absolutely was avoidable. Or was it really? Think about the entire plan? Think about what Trump of the Patriots have done here. They have exposed the private Western central bank to criminal syndicate. They have exposed their agenda. So people can clearly see what they're really trying to do. Because this is not a normal crashing of the economy, where all of a sudden, we see companies just laying off for no reason. People can explain it. Why did this happen? What's going on? The market's falling. It's not one of those times. I know that the central bank drove those certain crashes. But people were kept in the dark back then. People really didn't realize what was going on. Or they thought it was natural, that the market was coming down. This time around, they're watching the actions of Biden and the puppet masters, the central bank. And they're watching everything that they do. And they're watching how they're destroying the economy, how they're actually causing this problem. And they're pretending that someone else is causing this problem. And what I mean by that, he keeps pointing to Putin. Actually, before Putin, he was pointing to COVID. So I guess COVID is not responsible. It's only Putin now. And when the war comes, or with special operation comes to an end, in Ukraine, who's going to blame? Next, it's going to be very, very difficult on this administration, on the puppet masters, on the private central bank. And look what people are seeing with the Green New Deal. People are seeing it fail, right in front of their eyes. Yes, it sounded great. When they were saying this, let's clean up the earth, let's make it all better for us. And now they're really starting to see that aid. This is not really what they're really trying to do here. They're not really trying to make the earth better. They're trying to make it so we can travel. They're trying to make it so we don't eat their food. They're trying to make it so we don't use their resources. People now can see this very, very clearly. And people now, they're waking up to the fact that we've been in this economic illusionary economy, which was created by the private central bank. And now people can see how bad it really is. This economy was always bad. It was always an illusion. What Trump and the Patriots have done, they just pulled back the curtain so everyone can see it. And now that everyone can see this, people are starting to understand how bad this system really is, and how it doesn't benefit the people. And it's not just here in America, it's across the globe. Now, what's very interesting was that we know the BRICS, they're outside of the private ones, the central bank system, where the World Economic Forum wants to bring us into the Great Reset. They're going in a completely different direction. And the BRICS countries, which are made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, and many other little countries. Their trade right now is soaring, which is very interesting. Now, remember, each one of these countries, yes, they do have a deep state system inside. But I do believe in the end, the deep state players that have been trying to take these countries over trying to push their agenda. I do believe in the end, the deep state is going to cease to exist the way we know it today. And the actual elected leaders will be able to take control of their country. Think about this country here, the United States. Do you really think that the presidents, they're calling the shots? Do you really think Biden, Obama? They're the top person who's calling the shots? Or are they taking orders from someone else? Now all these people have been taking orders from someone else. Trump is not taking orders from these people. Trump, he is working with the military and trying to restore America. This is why the individuals and non-elected leaders can't stand him. And they're actually deploying every piece of ammunition that they have to get rid of him. And it has failed every single time. Because Trump, he's not just going after Obama or Hillary Clinton and those people. I do believe he's going after the entire enchilada, which is the entire system, which includes the private Western Central Bank, because if you don't get rid of the private West Central Bank, you really haven't solved anything, because the private central bank will just breed corruption. And you'll have the same thing happen again, because you have an open credit card. And when you have unlimited funds, without accountability, it breeds corruption. And this always goes back to the Prime Minister to make. Why do you think they had their corrupt people in certain places to make sure that they would never audit or it never removed the Federal Reserve System? They made sure of that. And I do believe in the end, as the Patriots take control, the central bank system is going to cease to exist the way we know it, it's going to be completely restructured. No, the central bankers, Rothschilds all the way up the chain, they're not going to be controlling any of this. And I do believe they're going to lose control, not just here in the United States. But once you lose it here in the United States, it's going to spread worldwide. And I do believe that, for this to happen, the people need to see and feel what the deep state, what the private central bankers are trying to do to them. And the only way to make people feel this and have this in common is through the economy. And that's why we're experiencing this now. This is why we're living through it. So we understand it and we never allow this to happen again. And I do believe in the end, like I've said before, the people are going to see it all and they're going to make the final decision. Hopefully you folks enjoyed this chat this morning.